Kirby and the Forgotten Land introduced many new things to the Kirby franchise. Some of these additions include the bizarre yet fun Mouthful mode, upgrading abilities, and a few new enemies and bosses. These new bosses, along with some returning faces, give Kirby a wide variety of foes to face. But which one is the most powerful? I'm Kyle with 1UP Binge, and this is Kirby and the Forgotten Land bosses weak to powerful. Now, before we begin, let's take care of some rules. First and foremost, the characters that qualify for this list are the ones that have a health bar when Kirby fights them. So the standard enemies that Kirby finds in each stage won't be considered. We'll also leave the illusion versions of each boss that has one off the list as well, especially since they could be considered the stronger versions of the boss it's based on. Lastly, for the most part, if a boss has multiple phases, even ones that change their title or name, we're gonna treat them as one character since they are still technically the same being. Any exceptions to this will be tied into Fecto Forgo, particularly when they possess someone or vice versa. For example, they possess Leon, controlling his body, so we'll still count that as part of Fecto Forgo's power, since that's one of their abilities. However, Fecto Forgo also gets possessed by a butterfly, turning them into Morpho Knight. Because this is something that Fecto Forgo didn't initiate, we're going to treat Morpho Knight as its own separate character on the list. With all that finally out of the way, let's get started. As per usual, we'll be starting with the weakest and working our way up to the strongest. And at the bottom are all the mid-bosses: Florina, Wild Bonkers, Wild Edge, and Wild Frosty. These guys are definitely fun to fight, but they're still mid-bosses. Compared to the rest of the entries on our list, these guys just don't hold up all too well. They typically take much less effort to beat, and we see them a little more often than any other boss. If the Kirby games have taught us anything, it's that the more common an enemy is, the easier it is to beat them up. Now we get to our full-on bosses. These are the ones that have entire stages dedicated to fighting them. Up first in this group is the plant-based boss, Tropic Woods. If you've played any previous Kirby games that feature Wispy Woods as a boss, then you'll pretty much already know what to expect here. While this isn't technically Kirby's first 3D fight with a tree, this is the first one that allows Kirby to move in any direction instead of just left or right. What does remain the same, however, is the fact that the tree, Tropic Woods in this case, is still stationary. This is ultimately why Tropic Woods is ranked so low. Most of his attacks are relatively slow and easy to avoid anyways, especially if you have fought bosses like him before. But the fact that Tropic Woods is stuck in one spot makes fighting him a lot easier. You can always keep track of where he is, and thus prepare yourself much better for what Tropic Woods will do. He's able to summon walls to defend himself, but it's never enough to fully protect him, even when he uses them to make a little maze. The only real strength this boss has are the roots he can surprise you with when they pop out of the ground and travel in somewhat random directions, which can damage Kirby and double as an extra obstacle. In the end though, these roots can still be destroyed fairly quickly, so they aren't that much of a threat. If Tropic Woods was somehow able to get up and move around while using some of his attacks, we may have ranked him as a stronger enemy. Our next entry may not be the strongest, but he's definitely one of the biggest: Goromondo. In terms of comparing his size to Kirby, Goromondo is like Great Ape Vegeta, while Kirby would be Goku. That said, bigger doesn't always mean better. Goromondo may be a giant compared to Kirby, or even most other characters in the game, and can pack a bit of a punch, but he has one big drawback that halts him from going any higher. Goromondo, under most circumstances, does not move very fast. Not to mention that the arena where you fight him is fairly large, so it's usually pretty easy to dodge him. He does throw things at you when you get far enough away from him, but even the projectiles can be easy to avoid. What does give him an edge over Tropic Woods though, is that he can actually move around. He can even jump directly to you or even away from you when circumstances become dire for him. If Goromondo ever returns in future games, maybe they can make him not only the size of a great ape, but as strong as one too. Next up is a silly armadillo, appropriately named Silly Dillo. Don't let his name or derpy appearance fool you. Silly Dillo may look ridiculous, and is even noted to be oblivious and forgetful, but he is still a foe you have to, at the very least, be careful around. Aside from the first phase of your fight with him, where he jogs towards you to try and catch you in his cage, Silly Dillo moves fairly quickly. His most noteworthy attack is his rolling attack, and it works similarly to Sonic's spin dash technique. He builds up his rolling speed and momentum while in one spot, then rapidly charges towards you. He often strikes up to 3 times when he chooses to use this move. Unless you jump out of the way with good timing, there's a good chance you'll be hit by it. He'll even often combine this attack with throwing fake armadillos at you, making it a bit tricky at first while trying to figure out how to avoid everything coming your way. What makes him stand out is the possibility that Silly Dillo has a one-hit KO. If he grabs you in the cage and you don't break free in time, he'll slam the cage on the ground and instantly defeat you, regardless of how much health you have. That said, the attempts he makes to even catch you in the cage are fairly slow and easy to see coming. Even if you somehow get caught, it's also not hard to get loose again. The Phantom version of this boss fixes this a bit, but since we're leaving those off the list, Silly Dillo shall remain where he is. At least his dancing is fun to watch. Next, we take a trip to the circus to talk about the lethal leopard herself, Cloraline. Essentially acting as the second in command and co-ruler of the animals of the Forgotten Land before the events of the game, it's no surprise that Cloraline can be a force to be reckoned with. Her most noteworthy attributes are her speed and potential to deal high amounts of damage. In the fights with her, she can move very quickly across the arena, sometimes being almost instantaneous. She has several attacks that involve lunging forward with her long-reaching claws, forcing the player to always be on their toes. She also has the ability to turn invisible, so timing your jumps and dodges are crucial for when she's about to reappear, as she attacks right after doing so. When her health is depleted enough, she also begins to jump up to heights that even Kirby can't reach in the arena. While up there, she can throw talons at you that hit the arena floor, or Kirby in some cases, almost immediately after she throws them. When ready to get into Kirby's face again, she jumps back down with a fierce attack, creating a shockwave on impact. This results in the player having to worry about a few things in a short span of time. If successfully avoided though, Cloraline is left wide open to attacks as she tries to get her claws unstuck. This is your best bet to wear her down a bit. We now move on to the king himself, King Dedede. For this entry, we'll be looking mostly at Kirby's first fight with him, and not so much when he was Forgo Dedede, as the mask that he had appeared to give him enhanced versions of his attacks that King Dedede cannot do on his own, as far as we know. He may not be considered the fastest in the game, but he can still move quickly enough to where Kirby won't often be able to stand still long enough to charge some of his attacks. What caught our attention was after Dedede loses his hammer. He proceeds to demonstrate incredible strength, as he's seen being able to lift and throw huge columns at you. When wielding them, the columns basically act as his hammer, if it was even deadlier, and had a lot more range. Additionally, when Dedede slams it onto the ground, the impact will cause a shockwave that reaches all the way across the arena. The ground does at least indicate where it will appear, so it isn't impossible to avoid or anything. That said, if it does hit, it's going to hurt. We'll also revisit the cutscene that shows Dedede leaving with Kirby and the Waddle Dees that he rescued after being freed from the mind control he was under. Upon the end of the battle, the group notices that many members of the Beast Pack are fast approaching, and they try to escape in an elevator. As they enter though, Dedede looks behind him and notices a Waddle Dee has tripped and is struggling to get up. Acting selflessly, Dedede grabs him and throws him into the elevator with Kirby and the others, just as the doors are closing. The last thing we see of Dedede is him turning to face the Beast Pack and pulling out another hammer, indicating that he'll at least attempt to take them all on by himself so that the others can escape. For a while, we don't know what happens to Dedede. That is, until near the end. We see photos of the Beast Pack, including Dedede, at the end of the story befriending Kirby and the members of the Waddle Dee town. Not only that, but Dedede can be seen just outside of the town's arena, relaxing and having some Waddle Dees tend to him. Even if he didn't win the fight he had with the Beast Pack earlier, this indicates he was at least strong enough to survive and get out of there at some point, even with how many Beast Pack members were attacking him. Next up, we have Leongar. Previously known as Leon before being controlled by the game's main antagonist, this guy is the leader of the Beast Pack, as well as being known as the King of the Beasts. For a reason. He has a wide variety of attacks, most of them being very fast and capable of dealing a lot of damage, whether he's using his teeth, claws, or anything else at his disposal. He can be very difficult to overcome with the first few attempts at fighting him. He's even capable of creating shockwaves by slamming on the ground. Not only this, but he has an attack where he drags his claws along the ground as he charges towards Kirby. Upon getting closer, Leongar will swing his claws upwards, creating walls of flames. It's hard to say much else about his level of power, as a lot of what he does can only be used after the main antagonist possesses him even more. That said, considering he is the leader of his pack, and that each of the members of said pack are willing to go out of their way to restore his soul and revive him, celebrating upon succeeding, it's safe to assume that his bite, and slashes for that matter, is just as big as his bark. We've now made it to what we believe are the top 3 strongest bosses in the game. The bronze medal is awarded to another very familiar face, Meta Knight. We're aware that Meta Knight isn't really evil here. As a matter of fact, it's established that he is quite heroic, as he willingly protects Waddle Dee Town right from the moment of his arrival. That said, since we are given chances to fight him in the Colosseum, we added him to the list. In Forgotten Land, Meta Knight is shown to be strong in more ways than just physically. As the story goes, Meta Knight actually arrived in the Forgotten Land a little bit before Kirby did, and he was able to explore it all before Kirby got there. When the main antagonist appeared and took control of the Beast Pack, including the previously mentioned Dedede and Leon, they tried controlling Meta Knight as well. However, Meta Knight was one of the very few able to resist it, as his sheer force of will prevented his mind from being taken over. Meta Knight is also no slouch when it comes to combat. With his speed, flight, and exceptional skills with his sword, Galaxia, Meta Knight is certainly a force to be reckoned with. He attacks on the ground, in the air, up close, or even from a distance. By swinging his sword, he's able to send energy waves towards his opponents at any time. This is something that even Kirby can usually only do at full health. If he doesn't want to use his sword, Meta Knight's also able to use some form of telekinesis, as he's able to lift several boulders into the air and hurl them back down. In addition to all that, Meta Knight is on record to have fought Gorimondo many times, and won all their duels. If he's able to do this with Gorimondo, it's probably safe to say that he can do this with the rest of the Beast Pack members. So all of his feats, abilities, and recorded victories definitely solidifies him to be in the top 3. Our silver medal of power has to go to Morpho Knight. We've seen our comments, ladies and gentlemen. After we did our Forgotten Land characters good to evil list and put Morpho Knight as part of another entry, you helped us become aware that Morpho Knight is their own character, and as a result, Morpho Knight now has their own spot. Now, Morpho Knight is a very tricky foe. In the first phase of your fight with them, Morpho Knight demonstrates its speed and ability to teleport around the arena, thus sometimes making it tricky to find openings to attack them. They're also capable of using some attacks that are very reminiscent of Meta Knights. For example, Morpho Knight is capable of swinging their sword and sending out fast-moving energy waves. Not only that, but they also summon funnels and large walls made of fire that only leave small openings to avoid. What makes this phase of the fight even more nerve-wracking is their ability to create a copy of Soul Forgo. While it does move relatively slowly, having to worry about another moving obstacle while dodging all of Morpho's other attacks can be tedious. This is especially true when they're in different parts of the arena, and you can't quite see both of them at once. Their list of abilities still doesn't stop there. They're also capable of using an energy pulse. This can be easy to avoid if you're watching out for it. But if you're caught in it, it can really mess you up. Not only does it mess with the player's vision of what is going on screen, but it can mess with the player's controls as well. Phase 2 of the fight makes things even more interesting. It starts with Morpho Knight summoning 2 giant blades, creating walls of fire when they both hit the ground. Morpho can also now create 2 copies of Soul Forgo at once, as opposed to just 1. Not only that, Morpho Knight is much more likely to use the vision and control distorting pulse attack a lot more often. Staying on your toes becomes much more crucial. Swords, fire, speed, teleportation, distortion, and Soul Forgo copies makes Morpho Knight one of Kirby's strongest foes. But that was only our second strongest, meaning there is still one more character that we have to go over. And our gold medal of power has to go to Forgotten Land's main antagonist, Fecto Forgo, also called Specimen IDF-86. Fecto Forgo is a foe that really doesn't know when to quit. As Fecto Forgo, they're shown to be able to take control of almost all living things in the Forgotten Land, with the exception of characters like Meta Knight, and keep control on all of them at once. As previously mentioned, this includes the likes of Dedede and the King of the Beast Pack, Leon. After completely possessing Leon, forcing him to fight Kirby, Kirby ultimately prevails. Upon this defeat, Fecto Forgo is enraged, taking on a monstrous form that absorbs many members of the Beast Pack. Upon defeating this form, Fecto successfully absorbs Elfilin, returning them to one being and becoming the ultimate life form. And no, this doesn't mean that they transform into another ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog. Instead, they become Fecto Elfilis. Facing off with Kirby once again on the roof, Kirby's able to remove Elfilin from their body, leaving Fecto-Elfilis in an unstable state. Desperate to prevail, Fecto then demonstrates their ability to open dimensional rifts, planning to have the planet of the Forgotten Land and Planet Popstar collide with one another, destroying them both. Upon being foiled once more and their body being destroyed, Fecto is now Soul Forgo. After traveling to the world consisting of Forgo's dreams, Kirby finds out that Soul Forgo has literally shattered Leon's soul into pieces. When Kirby gathers the pieces and everyone tries to restore him, Soul Forgo takes over Leon's body one more time, this time making him more threatening than ever. Still not able to win, Soul Forgo is absorbed by a butterfly, which becomes Morpho Knight. But we already talked about Morpho's capabilities. Once defeated yet again, Fecto reverses the absorption and takes control back, disappearing soon after. This is where the main storyline ends, but it is not the end of Fecto. If the player takes part in the Ultimate Cup Z and makes it all the way to the last fight without dying, it's revealed that after absorbing Morpho Knight's power, Soul Forgo has become Chaos Elfilis. As either Fecto-Elfilis or Chaos Elfilis, they have many attacks that are fast, large, and/or highly deadly. This is especially the case as Chaos Elfilis. Many of their attacks could actually be seen as stronger versions of previous bosses' attacks, including Meta Knight's ability to throw giant balls of debris. Losing once again, this still isn't the end of them. They now become a floating orb that has its own set of deadly strikes, including a black hole of sorts that does a ton of damage if Kirby is successfully drawn into it. One of its most difficult attacks to avoid is when the smaller orbs orbiting around it all shoot out laser beams in many directions. This can be weakened a bit by destroying some of the orbs, but it's still important to be cautious at all times. Even then, it can still be very hard to avoid all the lasers as long as they're out. Each hit will also do a good chunk of damage to Kirby. They also can send out shockwaves with thunderbolts and become a giant ball of fire that can really only be avoided by jumping on the highest pieces of debris on the field. There are still plenty of other ways for this foe to attack. After being defeated for the last time, they disintegrate into many particles, one of which gets absorbed by Elfilin. It has a lot of attacks, a few of which get deadlier with every fight. They refuse to go down multiple times, and will do practically anything to prevail. So with all that said, it goes without saying, Fecto Forgo easily takes the gold medal of power. But let us know in the comments section what you think. Which bosses from Kirby and the Forgotten Land were your favorites to fight? If you need a one-up, make sure to hit that notification bell and binge more of our Kirby videos, including our Kirby's copy abilities weak to powerful, and mouthful modes weak to powerful. Thanks for watching.